Crashing into the cliffs of Monarch's Bluffs, those who travel these lands will find their feet crossing mountains and islands, mountains and beaches, mountains and mines, and, well, more mountains. However, this land on the southwestern portion of Aeternum holds a deep and rich history, of which we are still hoping to know more of. There are tales of Madman Montour, tales of a crew who consciously chose to become lost following Master Cannoneer Jennings, to even the tales of King Arthur himself ruling Monarch's Bluffs. This is a cursed and blessed land, to which it is believed by Watcher Douglas that Poseidon himself casts the waves upon its shores and brings it visitors. Today, we are going to explore the lore of Monarch's Bluffs to see how it connects to Aeternum as a whole, and maybe help fill in the puzzle that is the lore of this new world. An important thing to note is I am not an expert on the lore. A lot of this is speculation as I fix together bits and pieces given to us. My hope is that my efforts help stimulate discussion of the lore, and we can together figure out what is happening here. So if there's anything I forget or I am wrong or you think I'm wrong about, just let me know. I'm learning as much as I'm teaching here. Monarch's Bluff's origins, like the rest of the settlements to my knowledge, are not exactly known. However, there is a story we are given that might show how it came to be. At the farm of Tres Campos, we found the original squash farmers there fled after an attack from what seems to be the Lost. They were trying to resettle in Farside Township, but years later, they were once again overrun. They then claimed that their plan was to head north of Devil's Quarry to make their new and hopefully final settlement. Now, this could lead to be one of a few things. These farmers could go on to create the settlement of Monarch's Bluffs. They could have made the area of Crone's Rest, or they might have failed their journey. However, I like the idea that they made it and started the actual settlement. The settlement itself is run by Heloise Seville, the constable of Monarch's Bluffs.
You know, I've been thinking about the threat of corruption. One thing that can at least give us some comfort is that it will have to overrun Everfall before it gets to our doorstep.
She seems strong and resourceful, though in the past she had a run-in with Christopher. He thought there was something dark about her. The way she looked at him made him feel like she viewed him as a threat, and he saw her as a nightmare. She claims, when she found his body, that he was delusional and paranoid. Maybe he was. Madness is not uncommon in this isle. But maybe there's a darker side to Heloise Seville. The rest of the settlement is filled with Urbanus Bixford, the magistrate who believes that
Monarch's Bluffs is a special place. A place where anyone can feel safe and welcome, regardless of where they came from or even what kind of person they are.
There's Demetrius Bitten, the innkeep, Racina Thornton, the survivalist who thought about abandoning Monarch's Bluffs, but decided to stay and support her home. Geerty Lothar is the barkeep that's always trying to throw a feast, and Estebanita Gomes, the artificer constantly struggling to battle the shortage of arms in Monarch's Bluffs. Lastly, we have Watcher Douglas, who serves as a watcher after Urbanus Bixford recommended the work, something he greatly enjoys as he's always enjoyed hearing stories of travelers and now gets to hear all the stories of those who wash up on the shores of Monarch's Bluffs. Overall, for a group of side characters most players probably don't care about, they have life, and hopefully down the road they will have more depth. Monarch's Bluffs is home to other, more sinister individuals as well. While the lost pirates and ancient skeletons number many, there are two who stand out amongst the rest. First, we have Madman Montour, a mad pirate. He slaughtered his own crew as they crashed upon the island of Aeternum, their eyes twisted in madness and joined with his lost soul. It's said you can hear him humming late into the nights, and his ballad is out there somewhere. An even stranger case is Master Cannoneer Jennings of Dead Man's Cove. His tomes of religion, if religion is the right word, called the Canonomicon, showcases his beliefs of how turning lost is the way to achieve the greatest of freedom. After the cycles of him dying and rising, he realized his time before as a pirate warlord was but a waste. After killing his first mate for mutiny, the sizzle and heat of the flintlock brought a satisfaction to him. He saw the universe that day, and on that day he became the Master Cannoneer, an almost religious title to him. Death became a fascination, and with every death he felt a bit of being lost, saying it was electric and a strange numbness. With every death he felt something alien and divine. After a while, he led his comrades into the idea of consistently dying to muskets and explosions in order to become lost. This presents the idea that being lost is actually something that can be mentally noticed and sought after. It isn't just a thing that happens to those who give up on death or the unlucky. And you can be semi-lost, experiencing the feelings of being lost and seeking it. These undead pirates, who, might I add, killed me multiple times as a level 45 despite them being in the 20s, personally sought to be lost. I'm unsure of any others who did such a thing, but I suppose it's an interesting case of what could happen on this island, and a true insight in what being lost is. Maybe as we explore settlements elsewhere, we'll gain greater insight on what it truly means to go into being a lost. But for sure, Master Cannoneer Jennings became one on purpose. The last great story I wanted to explore was the supposed arrival of King Arthur and his court, who seemingly reigned as a king in Monarch's Bluffs before his fall, and perhaps is the reason why it's called Monarch's Bluffs. He arrived to the land in an undamaged ship of strange design, which is miraculous since almost every ship so far has crashed upon the shores of the island. Yet the High King arrived, speaking Celtic and having magical blades and a wizard who could control the magic of the island. There could be a tie with this High King, who claimed to be King Arthur, and the ancients of the island. The supposed real King Arthur in history lived sometime in the late 5th and early 6th centuries. Now, we aren't sure when the ancients lived on the island, or really how old the population is here, but there is a chance the ancients came from the time of the Old British. At the very least, if this was the real King Arthur, that would put him arriving during the 5th or 6th centuries. For timeline references, it is believed that Jonas Alazar, the old fishing hermit you work with in the main quest, comes from times during the Crusades, which would put him on the island at the earliest, the 10th century. So in reference to who is around and what is around, this puts the story in older Aeternum, though we really have no idea how old the island really is. And with its cyclical nature and how the writings around this king are, it could also seem like the timeline is not fully accurate here. This is fascinating for many reasons. Again, he arrived unharmed on this island with a perfectly functioning ship speaking in Celtic. He had a magician who had an intense mastery of the island's magic, and he had an unbreakable sword, of which when tested, went undamaged. Now, the magician of the High King claimed to be Taliesin, another important man of history. He was a Brittonic poet whose work probably survived into the real world. He was a travel companion of the King Arthur and an advisor to him. So in the game, the story works that Taliesin would be there, with King Arthur. This mage instructed the land to help rebuild the wall among Monarch's Bluffs to defend against an evil in the north. There's a bit to break down there. First, when looking at the map, you can see here via a Reddit post, thank you Redditor, all of the walls of the ancients, which clearly were set up to defend against the north as a whole. Now, here on the map, you can see where the wall should be in Monarch's Bluffs. This is also fascinating because this showed the mage, whose plot twist has yet to happen, but it shows he knew about the corruption in the north, and so did the High King. The supposed Taliesin used his magic to rebuild this wall. However, Amaranth the Raven-Haired, someone whose records of this time were kept around, claimed the mage was corrupt. She saw him take on many apprentices and believed he harbored a secret desire in his heart. She wanted to plead to the High King after Myrddin casted her out of the order. Note, this could be the Soul Wardens, which puts the Soul Wardens to existing back then. Turns out the wizard, the supposed Taliesin, was a leader of the corruption and summoned its hordes. Being called the Crimson Sorcerer, he drove the people and the High King back to the island, potentially where in the island, and records end there. There's a lot to unpack here that we just don't have answers to. Was this all a ploy with this supposed King Arthur and he was in on it too? How was his companion a member of the corruption yet he wasn't? And how did they arrive on the island so safely? Hopefully this story is expanded on, as one of the most legendary kings in all of history arrived in Monarch's Bluffs, ruled there, and was betrayed by his advisor who was secretly corrupted. Maybe Taliesin, this Crimson Sorcerer, is a boss in the future, which would be amazing. Lastly, there's a character so important, we had to save him for last, even after the great saga of King Arthur. There's Stinky himself, who was kicked from the hunt for he was too stinky, and later on, a Thomas says he was attacked by a reeking, crazed man who he chased off with his pitchfork. However, the stink coming off him was so bad that it stuck to the pitchfork and is now known as the Stenchfork. Was this crazed man our Stinky? And will Stinky ever arrive as the final boss in the game? On a serious note, Monarch's Bluffs, with its mines and mountains, its beaches and its ruins, is a fascinating land with rich history. We're hoping to find out more. What are your thoughts with the King Arthur story? Do you think it was him behind it all? And what happened to them? And how did Jennings purposely turn lost? The stories of Monarch's Bluffs are fascinating, but we need more. They whet our tongues, but did not satisfy our thirst. Be sure to like and subscribe. Till next video, where we dive into First Light.